No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
And good morning, this is Mike Lodge. I am the business advisor. It's a beautiful day out today. I tell you, the sun's going to be out. Last night when I went out about 9 o'clock p.m., I was walking my dog, and it was like almost 75 degrees. I mean, and that's warm after we've experienced all this coldness, and then all of a sudden now, here we are into warm, nice warm weather. I tell you, it feels good. I am not going to complain one time about how hot it's going to get. Not one time. Because I don't know, this last winter, I froze to death. I mean, I literally got cold. Well, one time during Christmas time, my heater went, not my heater, but my heater went dead. And so they had to come out and replace it. So I had no heat in the house for it was like 20 degrees. So I had no heat in the house for almost 3 to 4 days. I mean, it was cold. I was freezing cold. And I don't think that cold has gone out of my old bones. Oh, it's tough when you get old. I tell you, you're looking forward to warm stuff. You're walking around. Anybody got some tapioca? That's what I feel like. As you know, I've talked to you about this before. I've been out looking at cars because I need to replace my little old car. I mean, it's gone across the United States about 3 or 4 times. It has put some miles on it. It's been worn. It's hauled lumber. It's hauled plants. It's hauled almost everything. And it's time for me to replace it because it's acting just a little bit, sluggish. But it's still working. I mean, it's still a good car. But I need to find a car because I want to take this bucket list trip. But I'm at the beginning to think that this bucket list trip may have to be postponed just a little bit, maybe a couple of months until I can find a vehicle that I can travel in. I'm sad about that and I'm devastated, but as I'm looking at the numbers, it doesn't make sense. I mean, can you imagine? People out there buying cars at the moment, their car payments are almost as much as their rent or their mortgage. Who would ever have thought that people would ever do that? But I was reading the analysis of a car shopping site called Edmunds. So they released some data on Monday that showed that the average annual percentage rate, APR, on a new financed vehicle in the first 3 months climbed to 7%. I'm not going to pay 7% on a car compared to 4.4% in the year earlier. So a year in back of us, they were paying 4.4%. So in fact, they even said that Edmunds has recorded since the first quarter of 2008. You remember what happened in 2008? Yeah. We had a severe depression. So the average monthly payment for a new car rose to $730 in the quarter from $656 a year earlier. Nearly 70% of car buyers who financed a new car in the quarter agreed to a whopping monthly payment of $1,000 or more. Also, it's a high time. It's a time high. Well, what do I mean? What do I want to say? I'm so shocked by these numbers. All-time high. Highest ever. Can you imagine someone paying $1,000 on a Camry or a Ford or something like that? And also, used car prices. That was new cars, but used car prices, they're rising due to inflation also. So, what do we do? I mean, I in the past, to be honest with you, I have not financed a car in 30 years. Every time I went to buy a car, I've paid cash for it. Now I don't drive fancy cars. So I buy a good used car that has been very well taken care of, but at a lower price. That's how I have been buying it in the past years. But now, I see cars at $25,000 on an old car with almost 200,000 miles on it. So you're paying a lot of money for a car that you don't know what the risk factor is on that many miles and how well the car has been taken care of. I was watching, there's a guy on YouTube who looks at, he owns a car dealership. Well, it's not a dealership, it's a car lot, I guess is what it's called. He buys used cars and sells them. And he goes to these auctions, and that's where all the dealers go to buy their used cars at all these auctions. And so also sometimes what happens is that the dealers also put their cars up for auction so that they can get the cash out of it. The problem is that the prices are so high and the bids are coming in low, so those cars are being pulled out of the auction to come back at another time because the dealers don't want to lose money on a car. So you've got all these cars up for auction, thousands and thousands of them, and no one can sell them because it's just too high. The prices of these cars are too high. And if they do buy it, so let's say they bid on a car and they get it for $3,000, well, they've got to sell it for $6,000 in order to make any money, because it's all that negotiation space that you have to think about also. So we have a problem in the car industry at the moment on used cars. And if you look at the credit history of a lot of these people, it's very, very low. And that is hurting people too, because now they're having to get higher price loans in order to buy a car. Cars are very important to all of us, right? Because that's how we get to work, that's how we get to the store, that's how we get to church, that's how we take the kids to school, there's a whole bunch of lists why we need that car. Electronic vehicles are not even selling on the lots. They're just sitting there because they're just too damn high. So we have an issue that we need to address very quickly here. Otherwise, we are going to have a lot of cars sitting in those car lots and they're not able to sell them. And for a while, though, we had a part shortage, and so they couldn't even finish putting the cars together. So, if you guys know of a good place to buy a good used car, I'd like to buy an SUV, because that's what I like driving. But at the moment, the prices out there are just too high. Just way too high. So if you know of a dealer out there who would like to sell me a car, but a nicely priced car that is reasonable, and I could get financing on it, I'd be greatly appreciated. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not paying $600. I'm not paying $700. And for sure, I'm not paying the $1,000. Anyway, that's the economy there. The other concerning factor that I have this morning is on commercial real estate, because we are having a problem where people not coming back to the office. So you've got all of this real estate with empty offices in it. If you look at the stores and the restaurants around the downtown section of a city, they're failing. We had more bankruptcies this year than ever before. And it's happening more and more. They cannot afford. Listen, I used to pay for my rent, and it was a reasonable price. Now it's twice as much. In some places, even 3 times as much. I can't afford to open up an office. I have to continue working out of my home here. That's why if you go into my house, you will see that my living room looks like a waiting room, because that's what it is. It's a waiting room. If you look at my office, it's in my sunroom, and that's where my office is, because that's all that I can afford. So I'm putting everything that I do, all my business is in my office here. I mean, in my home here. I mean, it's okay, but it's not the same as being in an office and talking to people and getting sound advice from people. I mean, it's good to be in an office structure. But at the moment, I just cannot afford it. I'm not going to pay my rent here at my home and then pay another. In fact, an office space now, even for like 300 square feet, is like $1,800. I'm not going to pay $1,800 for an office space for just a little tiny bit of square footage. So the trend at the moment is for people to operate out of their houses, like companies like myself, firms like myself. And that's the only way that we can do it. Listen, and when I see companies going into bankruptcy, small businesses going into bankruptcy, especially in downtown sections where those restaurants just can no longer survive because it's just too expensive. So what they're saying, and what I'm concerned about, is that the commercial real estate prices could tumble by 40%. That's the pricing of these buildings. Now this is at the almost the same. This decline is almost the same amount as what we had in 2008 financial crisis. So we're having a repeat almost of 2008. The problem that I'm seeing is that, like in Los Angeles, there's a real estate company who owns 2 buildings in downtown Los Angeles that just walked away from them because it doesn't make any sense, because as their interest rates have come up, the profit margin is 0, and it's a negative on these buildings. So it's affecting the downtown sector because now we've got 2 buildings that are in default. And there's going to be more buildings in many more downtown sections of this country of ours that are going into default. And we're going to see this over the next 30 to 60 days. And we have to be very cautious about this, because when you have all of these defaults happening, and you have companies going into bankruptcy, and you have massive layoffs. In fact, the job numbers were dismal this morning as they came out from ADP, because the amount of jobs created wasn't what they were expecting. So we have a problem in the job market at the moment, because jobs are being laid off and jobs are not being created. And there's some play on these numbers because of what companies are trying to do internally to get their companies to be solvent. That's the big word at the moment, is solvent. How long can we remain solvent? How long can the banks remain solvent? I don't think they are solvent at the moment. I think that we have so much losses in these banks that we're going to see some more bank problems. It's just inevitable. So we have got to, again, as I preach every single morning, we've got to manage our own personal finances very well, and we've got to live within what we're making. No longer can we afford to use the credit card. No longer can we afford to go out and buy cars at 7% interest. We have to be stagnant at the moment with our own finances and say, okay, how am I going to survive? How am I going to remain solvent? Listen, this is Mike Lodge, and if you have any questions, send it to thebusinessadvisor@gmail.com. And if you would like to sit down with me for a business consultation, go to my website at lodge-co.com, and you can schedule time with me on my site. Everybody have a great day. Talk with you soon. Love you guys. Bye-bye.